There is a moment in the Houses of Healing where Gandalf stands over a dying woman and tells her brother the truth nobody wants to hear. Éowyn is not sick from the Black Breath. Not really. Whatever poison the Witch King left in her arm is only finishing something that had already begun years earlier, in a cold hall, behind a door she was never allowed to walk through. She loved her brother more than words can tell, he says, and what she sought was not glory, but death in battle. Say that sentence out loud and sit with it for a second, because it is not a line people quote very often. It should be. It rewrites everything that happens next. Ask most people what they remember about Éowyn, and you will get one image: a woman on a battlefield, pulling off her helmet, telling the most terrifying creature in Middle-earth that no living man can kill him, and then doing it anyway. It is one of the most quoted moments in the entire trilogy. Girls grow up wanting to be her. It is treated, almost universally, as a triumphant scene about a woman proving she belongs where men said she didn't. That reading is not wrong. It is just missing the reason she was standing on that field to begin with. Because Éowyn did not ride to Pelennor Fields to prove anything. She rode there because she had, by her own words, stopped believing there was anything left worth staying alive for. And the fact that she survived that ride, that she found, afterward, a reason to keep living, is a far more remarkable story than the version everyone already knows. To understand what actually happened on that field, you have to go back to the hall she was trapped in long before any of it. By the time we meet her in the Two Towers, Éowyn has already spent years watching her uncle, King Theoden, decay in front of her, not from age, but from Grima Wormtongue's poison, whispered day after day into an old man's ear, until the King of Rohan is barely a king at all. Tolkien does not write this as a quiet political intrigue happening somewhere off to the side. He writes it as something Éowyn lives inside of, every single day, in a hall that is supposed to be her home. And Grima does not simply serve a corrupted king. He watches Éowyn. Tolkien is direct about this. His eyes linger on her in a way that makes her skin crawl, in a way that turns her own house into something closer to a cage with a guard posted permanently at the door. When Gandalf finally casts Grima out, it is not framed as rescuing a kingdom from a traitor. It is framed, just as clearly, as pulling a predator away from a woman who had no way to remove him herself. She did not ride out to win. She rode out to end. Hold that line for a moment, because everything that follows is Éowyn telling you, in her own words, exactly why that sentence is true, if you're willing to actually listen to her instead of just watching her. When Aragorn arrives in Rohan, Éowyn finally has someone to say this to directly, and what she says is not subtle. She tells him what her life has actually been waiting behind walls while men rode out to matter, tending an old man's decline, watching courage become something other people got to have. She does not describe frustration. She describes a woman who has run out of reasons to keep living the life she has been handed, and who has started looking, quietly, for a way out of it that would at least mean something. Then Aragorn, the one person she has opened this much to, turns her away not cruelly, but completely. His heart belongs elsewhere, to a choice made long before he ever rode into Rohan, and Éowyn is left with confirmation of something she likely already suspected, that even this door, the one relationship that might have given her a different future, was never actually open to her. This is not a minor romantic subplot. This is the second wall, closing in a life that was already made of walls. So when the armies of Rohan finally ride out to Gondor, and Theoden trying, in his own way, to protect her leaves Éowyn behind to govern in his absence, he is not offering her safety. From where she stands, he is handing her the exact sentence she has spent this entire story trying to escape. Watch, wait, stay behind the walls, while the men who matter ride towards something that means something. She does not accept it. Éowyn disguises herself, takes the name Dernhelm, and rides to war in secret. And here is where the popular telling usually speeds past something important, because it wants this to be the empowering part of the story, the moment she takes her fate into her own hands. It is that. But listen to how Tolkien actually frames her departure not as a woman riding toward a future she wants to build, but as someone who does not expect, and does not particularly plan, to come back. This is not a woman running toward glory. This is a woman who has decided that if courage is the only thing left that still means anything to her, she would rather spend it completely than let it rot, unused, inside a hall she was never allowed to leave. Then the Witch King comes for Theoden. Éowyn stands between the Lord of the Nazgul and her fallen king, and he tells her, with the absolute confidence of something that has never once been wrong, that no living man may hinder him. It is a threat built entirely on a loophole. Neither of them fully understands, yet a prophecy about a fate no living man could fulfill. She removes her helmet. "I am no man," she says. She did not ride out to win. She rode out to end. And this is the moment worth being completely honest about, because it is far more powerful read this way than as a simple girl power victory lap. Éowyn is not standing there certain she will win. She is standing there having already decided, days earlier, that her life was worth spending on exactly this kind of moment, a hopeless stand against something no one else could stop, in defense of the one person who had never made her feel like a burden to be managed. Whether she survives it or not is almost beside the point, from where she started this journey. She has already made peace with the ending either way. She wins. Barely, brutally, with help from a hobbit nobody expected to matter, and at a cost that nearly kills her. Here is what most retellings skip entirely, because the sword strike is the exciting part and what comes after is quiet and slow and much harder to film. Éowyn does not walk away from that battlefield transformed and triumphant. She is carried, unconscious, poisoned by the same darkness that killed the thing she defeated and brought to the houses of healing more dead than alive. And when Gandalf examines her, he does not simply diagnose a wound. He diagnoses a woman who had been dying long before the Witch King ever touched her. Her brother Éomer, standing at her bedside, admits something quietly devastating, that he had thought her cold, unreadable, closed off, back when she was still trapped in that hall. Not because she was cruel, because she had already, in some sense, gone somewhere the rest of them couldn't follow. The battlefield did not break Éowyn. It simply finished revealing a break that had been happening slowly, for years, behind a door nobody thought to open. This is the part of the story that makes Éowyn genuinely rare among the great characters of this legendarium, and it has nothing to do with the sword. It's what happens after she survives. Because she does survive. And in the houses of healing, something in her that had been quietly extinguishing itself for years starts, very slowly, to come back. It happens through Faramir, another wounded person, another survivor of an impossible household, someone who understands what it is to grow up unseen by the people meant to value you most. They do not fall into each other because the plot requires a wedding. They recognize something in each other, two people who had both, in their own ways, stopped expecting to be chosen by anyone. And here is the line that almost nobody quotes, even though it matters more than the Shield Maiden's speech ever did. Éowyn tells Faramir she no longer wishes to be a queen, or to ride to war, or to be sung about. She wants, in her own words, to be a healer, and to love the things that grow instead of the things that die. That is not a woman settling for less. That is a woman who spent her entire youth convinced that dying meaningfully was the only kind of meaning available to her, finally discovering that living quietly might actually be worth choosing too. The Witch King's death is the scene everyone remembers. It is not, in the end, the moment that mattered most. The moment that mattered most is the one nobody puts on a poster, a woman standing in a garden, choosing, for the first time in the entire story, a future instead of an ending. If you have ever felt like the walls around you were the only thing anyone would ever let you have, would you have ridden out like she did? And more than that, if you had survived it, would you have known how to want anything else afterward? That second question is the harder one, and it is the one this channel exists to actually sit with, instead of skipping past on the way to the next battle scene. She did not ride out to win. She rode out to end. But she did not end. She lived long enough to want something quieter than glory, and that, far more than the sword through the Witch King, is the victory Tolkien actually wrote for her.